U.S. President Joe Biden landed in South Korea less than an hour ago on the first leg of his 5-day trip to Seoul and Tokyo. Like we've heard from our previous reports, Biden's visit marks the first since he took office, and it comes only some 10 days after President Yoon Suk-yeol was sworn in. After arriving earlier, Biden headed straight to a Samsung chip factory in Pyeongtaek, where they were welcomed by Samsung Electronics Vice Chairman Jae-yong. The two leaders and Lee will deliver a short speech in the next few minutes, and we will give you a live coverage of the scene with simultaneous translation in English. As we wait for the speech, we will give you a short recap of what we can expect from President Biden's visit. The two leaders will meet again Saturday for their first summit, which will be held first in a small group and then in an expanded format to discuss the full range of security and economic challenges facing the allies and the region. Top on the agenda will be the growing threat of North Korea's nuclear and missile programs. And the two sides are expected to discuss ways to bolster their combined defense and deterrence. Also during their summit, Yoon is expected to announce South Korea's participation in the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, an initiative proposed by Biden to ensure and secure resilient supply chains, set the rules of digital economy, and invest in clean, modern, and high standards infrastructure. After which the two will attend a banquet attended by key business leaders, including Samsung Electronics Vice Chairman Jae-yong, SK Group Chairman Choi Tae-won, Hyundai Motor Group Chairman Chung Hee-sun, and LG Group Chairman Koo Kwang-mo at the National Museum of Korea. And after that, on Sunday, Biden will wrap up his 3-day visit to Seoul and depart for Japan, where he will officially hold a virtual summit of the IPEF. We are currently waiting for the live coverage of the speech of the presidents, but it seems like we're experiencing some delays. So let's talk to some experts first before we listen to the speeches. So for this, we are joined by Kim Jae-chun, professor of Seogang Graduate School of International Studies, and Bruce Klinger, senior research fellow at the Heritage Foundation, both via Skype. Thank you both for joining us, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
So we are yet to hear the speech of the presidents of South Korea and the U.S. So we will first talk about the significance of the latest summit. The latest summit is highly significant as it will be the soonest a summit has taken between Seoul and Washington after the inauguration of, South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol just around 11 days ago. And it's also President Biden's first visit to the Indo-Pacific region since taking office. So, Mr. Klinger, can this signal a strengthened Seoul-Washington alliance?
I think the relationship is already very strong, and now this will show that the U.S. can focus on not only the crisis in Ukraine, but also maintain its focus on Asia and the growing North Korean and Chinese threats. So Biden's trip, is delayed from what would have been an earlier trip because of COVID, but it's intended to show how important not only the quadrilateral security dialogue is in addressing security challenges and other challenges in the region, but also the critical importance of both South Korea and Japan as our allies.
Right. Now, how about Professor Kim? In Seoul, the first on the itinerary for the two leaders was Samsung Semiconductor Factory in Pyeongtaek. How do you read into the significance of this?
Well, I think it's quite significant that two leaders picked the Samsung's semiconductor factory in Pyeongtaek as the first itinerary. Initially, I thought it was expected that President Biden might pay a visit to Panmunjom and DMZ as the first itinerary. But the fact that Samsung's semiconductor factory was chosen as the first place of visit, I think it speaks volume about how two countries value the importance of supply chain resilience on key industries, particularly in semiconductor industry. This is not new though, as Mr. Klinger just said. During the 2021 summit between President Moon and President Biden, two countries already agreed to cooperate very closely with each other in restructuring global supply chain, in semiconductor industry, lithium battery, pharmaceuticals, rare earth oils, whatnot really. Samsung Electronics and SK Hynix, I think at the time of the visit pledged that they would make a sizable investment in the United States. And then President Biden held that decision. So in this new era of economic security, there is a saying that economic security is national security and national security is economic security. So two countries, I think, will have to cooperate more closely, not just in the area of traditional security, but also in the area of economic security.
Right. Now, during the summit set for Saturday, Professor Kim, what we understand is it's going to last for around 90 minutes. What do you think will be the main items on the agenda? And do you think some concrete agreements could be made through the summit?
Well, for one thing, I think both leaders will highlight the importance of protecting and promoting rules-based liberal international order, which I think is being undermined by Russia in Europe and by China in the Pacific region. In that context, two leaders may discuss the ways in which South Korea could play a more of a proactive role in helping Ukrainians, the ways in which South Korea could contribute to protection of RBIO, rules-based international order in the Pacific region. President Yoon mentioned the importance of liberty for some 35 times during the inaugural speech and pledged that South Korea would do more to preserve freedom and liberty in the world. So both leaders would agree that two countries should present a more of a unified front in this fight against those who are trying to undermine democracy, freedom, and rules-based international order. Two leaders would discuss how to strengthen the U.S. extended deterrence and how to augment deterrence and defense against ever-increasing North Korean nuclear missile threats. Also, they would discuss how the two countries could cooperate with each other in the Pacific region economically.
Right. Now let's touch upon North Korea a little bit. Mr. Klinger, just days before the summit, there have been reports that North Korea could hold its 7th nuclear test soon. How do you think Seoul and Washington should approach the North Korea issue?
Well, President Yoon has articulated a policy, I think, quite different from his predecessor, Moon Jae-in. And it will be much more in line with that of the United States as well as Japan. It'll be a pragmatic, principled policy where all the countries are still eagerly seeking engagement, let alone negotiations with North Korea. But Pyongyang has been refusing any kind of dialogue. So in the meantime, we need to maintain military deterrence, which is not only the U.S. Affirmation of the extended deterrence guarantee, but also steps that South Korea has taken to improve its own military capabilities. And then we also need to maintain enforcing U.S. laws, international laws, and UN sanctions as long as North Korea continues to violate them. So with a nuclear test or an ICBM test, that will lead the U.S. to try to get additional measures through the United Nations, which Beijing and Moscow unfortunately will block. But there's more we can do to enforce the existing sanctions. But the U.S. and other nations haven't been fully enforcing those sanctions.
Right. What about you, Professor Kim? Do you think, what are your thoughts on possible ways South Korea and the U.S. could do to, deal with North Korea?
Well, I think we'll have to talk about the ways in which we can strengthen the U.S. extended deterrence. Unfortunately, South Korea is mainly reliant on American, extended deterrence. But many people in South Korea don't even know what that language means. So I think there's got to be some more concrete measures, such as incorporating a nuclear sharing program in the framework of extended deterrence to augment deterrence capability against North Korea's nuclear and missile threats. And in my personal opinion, deterrence is all about credibility. And, not many South Koreans think that American extended deterrence is strong, although, officials from both countries keep saying that, it's stronger than ever. and there is no daylight between the two countries in that respect. But many South Korean regular people aren't really assured that we have a proper deterrence against North Korea. So I think both leaders will have to come up with a more concrete measures, measures that are palpable to many South Korean regular people here in South Korea.
Well, Professor Kim, also in the coming days, President Biden is poised to launch the IPEF, or the Indo-Pacific Economic Framework. For starters, can you tell us what this is and what it seeks to pursue?
You know what? In order for the Biden administration to have success in its Indo-Pacific strategy, I think economic engagement should be the major component of that strategy. But the Trump administration walking out of the TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership, pretty much left the U.S. Economic engagement strategy in tatters because TPP was the golden child of U.S. strategy toward Asia. Now the Biden administration is presenting this IPEF, Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, as an alternative, alternative to TPP, to counter China's growing economic clout in the Pacific region. So during this trip to Seoul and to Tokyo, President Biden is expected to promote IPEF to South Korea and to Japan and to other Quad countries. Arguably, there are four components to IPEF, four pillars, if you will. They are trade, supply chain resilience, infrastructure building, and anti-corruption. And South Korea already decided to join IPEF from the very beginning. And China is not really happy about South Korea's decision. But we figured that joining IPEF from the very onset is in our interests. But that said, there is a lingering suspicion here. I personally doubt whether IPEF has enough of domestic political support in the United States, whether it really has a substance and staying power in the United States. Unless South Korea is convinced that IPEF is a real deal and IPEF is going to here to stay, there is going to be only a rhetorical support from South Korea for IPEF.
Well, you mentioned China shortly, but so how do you expect China to react if South Korea actually, joins this group? Professor Kim. Yeah.
China is reacting very vehemently against this decision. But, it's not just South Korea that decided to join IPEF. I think it's some other 11 countries that already decided to join IPEF. And this is not really a official agreement such as CPTPP or TPP. And we are an important part of what is known as RCEP, this mega FTA where China is playing a central role there. So we are not really trying to exclude China from this new economic framework here. If it is in our interest, we'll be joining our RCEP and we'll be joining IPEF. And I think that's the kind of decision that South Korea, as a sovereign country, can make. And China really shouldn't say, if there is going to be another petty retaliation after our decision to deploy THAAD, I think it's really unbecoming of the great country that China aspires to become. And China's, ranking internationally will downgrade. China really shouldn't respond with petty retaliation as they did after our decision to deploy THAAD.
Right. What about Mr. Klinger? President Yoon is expected to participate, like just our Professor Kim said. What kind of an impact do you think this will have on South Korea's economy and diplomacy with China? And how should Seoul set out to manage its relations with Beijing?
Well, I think the agreement is still very much a work in progress. I don't think there's as many details as many of us would like to know about. And I think it is a bit of a watered down TPP. But the overall goal, part of it would be the diversification away from an over-reliance on China's economy. So because South Korea suffered economic retaliation after the deployment of the THAAD, the steps we should be taking are making preparations for how to avoid that kind of retaliation or reduce the impact of it. So far, it's sort of inhibited South Korea's actions in some policy, but President Yoon has said he wants to have South Korea, for example, assume a larger security role in the region. That could trigger Chinese response. So we need to be working on the economic side as well to reduce China's ability to coerce not only South Korea but other nations. So as Professor Kim pointed out, is that economic security is also national security. So we need to be taking that into account as well. And I think the IPEF is an attempt at that, but we're not sure if it's going to be as strong as the TPP would have been.
Right. Now, after talking with President Yoon for a summit tomorrow, Biden also plans to have a banquet attended by the heads of South Korea's 4 largest conglomerates after his summit, namely the leaders of Hyundai Motor, SK, LG, and Samsung. Professor Kim, what kind of an economic cooperation can we expect from these interactions?
Well, before we go into the details of cooperation, President Biden will really have to show to the domestic audience in the United States that his trip to Asia, to South Korea, is not just about North Korea or Indo-Pacific strategy or rules-based liberal international order. This trip and also the alliance is about economy and about the foreign policy for the middle class and how the alliance can contribute to his landmark policy, Build Back Better. As a matter of fact, in 2021, when President Moon and President Biden met, President Moon was accompanied by Korean conglomerate leaders. So this is not really new. And back then, these conglomerate leaders announced really a big investment decisions that would create jobs in the United States and help local economies in the United States. I heard that this time the Hyundai Motors chairman Jung Lee-sun would announce some $7 to $8 billion investment decisions to build the electric car factory in the state of Georgia. So hopefully all these investment decisions of the Korean conglomerates will lay a stronger foundation for comprehensive alliance between the two countries.
Right. Before we let you go, let's ask one more question to Mr. Klinger. What about the idea of, what are the notion of the Americans? What do they think about the IPEF? Do they support them?
Well, I think with the IPEF, we're trying to improve the economic cooperation with South Korea and other nations. We're trying to reduce the supply chain problems. So, as Professor Kim pointed out, we need to be working together on this, and it's a way of not only encouraging Korean investment in the United States, but working more broadly throughout the region. So we'll have to see how the IPEF sort of plays out, what the details of the agreements are, how many nations are going to be involved. There were some reports that some of the details would be watered down to encourage additional countries to participate. So the effectiveness we're unsure of, but I think at least the intent is a good one to ensure that economic security is part of the overall strategic views, not only of the United States, but also its allies and partners in the region.
Right. Well, thank you so much for your insights, Professor Kim and Mr. Klinger. We are currently waiting for President Biden and President Yoon Suk-yeol's speech at the Samsung chip plant in Pyeongtaek, but it seems like we're seeing a bit of a delay. I have some questions for you after listening to the speech, but I'm afraid we will have to reconnect back after listening to some of our reports again. But for the meantime, thank you again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now, President Biden has become the first U.S. president to witness firsthand Samsung Electronics' most advanced chip-making technologies. By visiting Samsung's chip manufacturing complex in Pyeongtaek, President Biden is looking to strengthen the semiconductor alliance between Seoul and Washington. Jae-yong tells us more.
U.S. President Joe Biden's first stop in South Korea, a trip to the world's largest semiconductor plant, boasting the world's first base for 3nm class chips. Samsung Electronics semiconductor manufacturing complex in Pyeongtaek, south of Seoul, spans a site 2.89 million.
Oh, we apologize for cutting in, but we are now seeing a live footage of Samsung Electronics Vice Chairman Jae-yong speaking at the Samsung chip factory in Pyeongtaek right now. I believe after this, President Biden and President Yoon Suk-yeol will also give a speech. Let's take a listen.
International company to make semiconductors in the United States. We highly value our friendship and look forward to continuing our special relationship. Semiconductors are engines of the modern world, driving growth and opportunity for all. They enable people around the globe to have equitable access to the internet and its vast database of knowledge, and they advance business productivity on all fronts. This innovation is possible with your devotion. So thank you, Team Samsung. In South Korea, the United States, and around the world. It is now my great honor and pleasure to welcome our presidents. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me welcoming President Yoon and President Biden.
바이든 대통령님, 그리고 내외 귀빈 여러분, 오늘 바이든 대통령께서 방한의 첫 일정으로 세계 최대 규모의 삼성 반도체 평택 캠퍼스를 방문하신 것을
very meaningful
매우
that
뜻깊게
President Biden has
생각합니다.
visited the world's largest
바이든
semiconductor complex,
대통령께서는
Samsung
취임하신
Semiconductor
이래
Pyeongtaek campus today
글로벌
as the first
공급망의
itinerary of
핵심으로
his visit to South Korea.
반도체의
Ever since
중요성을
taking office, President
강조해
Biden has
왔습니다.
emphasized the importance of semiconductors as an
반도체법의
essential
의회
part of the
통과를
global
위해
supply chain.
많은
I also
노력을
know that
쏟고
President
계신 것을
Biden
알고 있습니다.
has been putting
아울러
efforts for the
공급망
CHIPS
정상회의를
Act
직접
passed the
주재하시고
Congress. He also
글로벌
presides
공급망
over the
안정을
supply
위한
chain summit
국제
himself
협력을
and leads the
이끌고
international
계십니다.
cooperation for global supply
오늘
chain
바이든
stability.
대통령의
President Biden's
평택
visit
캠퍼스
to the
방문은
Pyeongtaek campus today will
반도체가
be a good
갖는
opportunity
경제
to
안보적
ruminate on
의미는
the
물론
economic and security
반도체를 통한
implications of
한미
semiconductors,
글로벌
as well as the
포괄적
meaning
전략
of the
동맹의
ROK-US
의미를
Global
되새길 수 있는
Comprehensive
좋은
Strategic
기회가
Alliance
될
through
것입니다.
semiconductors.
반도체는
Semiconductors are
자율주행차,
necessary
AI,
parts for
로봇
all
등
high-tech industries,
모든
including
첨단
autonomous
산업의 필수
vehicles,
부품이자
AI, and
미래
robots.
기술
It is also an
경쟁력을
essential
좌우하는
factor that determines
핵심
future
요소입니다.
technological competitiveness.
대한민국은
Korea
전 세계
plays
메모리
a key
반도체의
role in the
70%를
global semiconductor
공급하면서
supply chain, providing
반도체 글로벌
70% of the world's memory
핵심적인
semiconductors.
역할을 수행하고 있습니다. 한미 동맹의
Just
오랜
like the long
역사처럼
history of the
한미
ROK-US
반도체
alliance,
협력의
the history of
역사
cooperation in
매우
semiconductor
깊습니다.
between the two countries is
이
also
땅의
long.
첫 반도체 기업으로
Korea's first semiconductor
한미
company,
합작의
established in
한국 반도체가
1974, was
1974
Korea Semiconductor, which was a joint venture between
미국
Korea and the United
마이크론사와의
States.
기술 제휴를 통해
It was through
세계 세
a
번째로
technological partnership with
64K
Micron
DRAM을 개발한
Technology
이래
of the United States,
미국
and it became
오스틴시의
third in the world to develop 64 kV RAM. And ever since, cutting-edge foundry factories were built in Tyler City, following Austin City in the United States. Semiconductor materials and equipment companies in the U.S., such as Lam Research and DuPont, are making investments in Korea, thereby strengthening collaboration with Korean semiconductor companies. At the same time, active cooperation between the South Korean and U.S. governments in the field of semiconductor is taking place. Through the Korea-U.S. Semiconductor Partnership Dialogue launched at the end of last year, cooperation in semiconductor supply chain, as well as collaborative projects in investment, human resources, and technology are under progress. I believe that semiconductor is a national security asset that will play a pivotal role in shaping the future, and therefore plan to unsparingly provide bold incentives and necessary support. I would like to ask President Biden to pay great attention to various kinds of incentives for Korean semiconductor companies' investments in the U.S., and also to the high-tech materials, equipment, and design companies of the U.S. investing in Korea. I'd like to once again express my deepest gratitude to President Biden for visiting the Pyeongtaek campus, the heart of Korean semiconductor industry. I hope today's visit will serve as a momentum for the Korea-U.S. relations to be reborn as an economic security alliance that is based on cutting-edge technology and supply chain cooperation. Thank you.
President, thank you. Thank you. You're very generous. Thank you very much. Mr. President, thank you for that introduction. It's wonderful to be back in the Republic of Korea. President Yoon, I'm honored by the welcome you've given me to your beautiful country. And congratulations again on your election. Congratulations. And recent inauguration. I and my country look forward to a very productive few days together where we can get to know one another better and explore ways to take the alliance between the Republic of Korea and the United States to even greater heights than it already exists. And Vice Chairman Lee, thank you for welcoming us to this Samsung semiconductor facility. This is an auspicious start to my visit, because it's emblematic of the future cooperation and innovation that our nations can and must build together. I'm joined by my Secretary of Commerce, Secretary Raimondo is here in the front row, who's working every day to bring us closer to that goal. I've just seen how this plant makes the most advanced semiconductor chips in the world. They're a wonder of innovation and design, precision, and manufacturing. Semiconductors power our economies and enable our modern lives, from our automobiles to our smartphones to medical diagnostic equipment. And when it comes to the most advanced chips, like the ones made here in Samsung, is only one of only 3 companies in the world that makes these chips. It's incredible, an incredible achievement. Because these little chips, only a few nanometers thick, are the key to propelling us into the next era of humanity's technological development. Artificial intelligence, quantum technologies, 5G, and so very much more, things we haven't even thought of at this point. This plant also reflects the close bonds and innovation between our countries. Much of the technology and machinery that is used to make these chips was designed and produced in the United States. And by uniting our skills and our technological know-how, it allows the production of chips that are critical to both our countries and are essential sectors of our global economy. And thanks for the incredible $17 billion investment that Samsung announced last May, soon to the United States to have a facility like this one that manufactures the most advanced chips in the world in Tyler, Texas. Thank you. This investment will create 3,000 new high-tech jobs in Texas and add to 20,000 jobs Samsung already supports in the United States of America. So I want to thank Samsung for their investment and for continuing to expand the very productive partnership between the Republic of Korea and the United States. And I know that Samsung will also be working with Stellantis on a joint venture to build a new facility in the United States that will manufacture batteries for electric vehicles. Investments like these are going to help catapult us forward toward a clean energy future which we both badly need, advancing our shared economic growth, our energy security, and our climate goals. I also want to make clear that these are smart business decisions. Samsung didn't invest $17 billion without, as we say in America, running the numbers. The United States is a top destination for foreign direct investment, like the one Samsung is making, because we have a world-class, highly skilled, and highly committed workers. I urge Samsung and Stellantis and any company investing in the United States to enter into partnerships with our most highly skilled and dedicated and engaged workers you can find anywhere in the world, American union members. Stellantis knows how much benefit comes from a successful relationship with the union in America. They have a national agreement with my friend Ray Curry, the United Auto Workers. For every joint venture that manufactures electric vehicle batteries would be made stronger by collective bargaining relationships with American unions. We also have outstanding, skilled, dedicated union building and construction trades workers ready to build a new Samsung facility in Texas. So let's work together to make this happen and to get that plant built on time and on budget, safely and efficiently, because union labor means high-quality work that delivers the best possible return on investment. The United States has premier colleges and universities, a culture that fosters innovation and entrepreneurship, a transparent and predictable legal system where companies know their ideas and their investments will be protected. And my administration is doubling down on all of these strengths. We're investing more than $1 trillion to upgrade America's infrastructure coast to coast over the next decade. And hopefully soon, with the Bipartisan Innovation Act, we'll deliver historic federal investments in U.S. research and development, including funding for something called the CHIPS Act to revitalize the U.S. semiconductor industry. Our two nations work together to make the best, most advanced technology in the world, and this factory is proof of that. And that gives both the Republic of Korea and the United States a competitive edge in the global economy, if we can keep our supply chains resilient, reliable, and secure. Over the last few years, we've seen just how critical it is. The COVID-19 pandemic, exposed the fragility of just-in-time supply chains. The global semiconductor shortage has caused a shortfall in consumer goods, especially automobiles, and it's contributing to higher prices around the world. And now, Putin's brutal and unprovoked war in Ukraine has further spotlighted the need to secure our critical supply chains so that our economy, our economic, and our national security are not dependent on countries that don't share our values. A critical component of how we'll do that, in my view, is by working with close partners who do share our values, like the Republic of Korea, to secure more of what we need from our allies and partners and bolster our supply chain resilience. That's why our strategy is to build around strengthening our ties and cooperation across the board. That's how both our nations can improve our long-term resilience, increase our shared prosperity, and put our people in the best position to come out ahead in the competition of the 21st century. And that's why, Mr. President, I came to the Republic of Korea on my first trip to Asia as President of the United States. So much of the future of the world is going to be written here in the Indo-Pacific over the next several decades. We're standing at an inflection point in history where the decisions we make today will have far-reaching impacts on the world we leave to our children tomorrow. This vibrant democracy has become a powerhouse of global innovation by investing in educating its people. And companies like Samsung that are driven by responsible development of technology and innovation will be critical to shaping the future in the direction of our two countries, the direction we both want to go. So this is the moment, in my view, to invest in one another, to deepen our business ties, to bring our people even closer together. This is something President Yoon and I will be talking about on our visit later after this meeting and in the months ahead, because the alliance between the Republic of Korea and the United States of America is a linchpin of peace, stability, and prosperity for a region of the world that we seek. So thank you all very much, and President Yoon, thank you for everything you've done so far. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Now that wraps up our live coverage of President Yoon Suk-yeol and U.S. President Joe Biden's speeches at the Samsung Electronic Chip Factory in Pyeongtaek. Now let's have a short analysis of the speeches by connecting to our panel of experts again via Skype. Professor Kim Jae-chun, Dean of Seogang Graduate School of International Studies, and Bruce Klinger, Senior Research Fellow at the Heritage Foundation. Hello to you guys again.
Hello, thanks.
So we just heard the speeches of President Biden and the President Yoon Suk-yeol at the Samsung factory in Pyeongtaek. I wonder, how did you take it? So let's start with Professor Kim. What was the takeaway from the speeches?
Well, to me, major takeaway is that both leaders are really committed to upgrading the alliance to value-based, high-tech alliance. I think the RAP-U.S. alliance has been the most exemplary alliance in the world. It started as a security alliance to deter communism and communist threat on the Korean Peninsula. But now it is really morphing into a truly value-based, comprehensive global alliance. So, sure, both leaders also expressed, unflagging support to each other and exchanged usual greetings. But the speeches here today were really all about how important it is to have a close cooperation on key industries, particularly the semiconductor industry. As President Yoon said, semiconductor is indispensable virtually in all these high-tech industries, and in maintaining resilience global supply chain, semiconductor is the most important thing. So I think it makes all the sense because the U.S. has the original technology and South Korea has mass production capability there. Samsung is one of the best, if not the best. So the cooperation is going to be complementary in nature. So from the speeches of both leaders, we can tell that cooperation on economic security and supply chain resilience is going to be the major theme of the summit tomorrow. Earlier, we talked about the importance of North Korean issues for the summit. Sure, North Korea is going to occupy the central place during the summit as well, but now I'm under the impression that most of talks would revolve around on how both countries can enhance cooperation on technology, supply chain resilience, economic security, and economic cooperation in the Pacific region.
Right. Well, what about you, Mr. Klinger? How did you assess, what part of the speeches of the two leaders caught your attention?
I think really just emphasizing the economic aspect of the bilateral relationship. For most Americans, when they think of the Korean Peninsula, they think of the North Korean military threat, nuclear, missile, and increasingly cyber attack capabilities. And certainly if North Korea does another nuclear or ICBM test, that's what's going to be emphasized in American views. Far fewer Americans, I think, understand the importance of South Korea to our economy and to the global supply chain, the global economy. And what President Biden did here, I think, was emphasize sort of the overall economic importance of the bilateral relationship, the commercial ties that our two countries have, and then also for U.S. domestic audience, highlighting the investment, not only of Samsung, but other South Korean chaebol and companies in the U.S. and the amount of jobs and foreign direct investment it means for the U.S. So I think he really hit on a lot of different points on the economic aspect of the relationship. And then the security relationship will come up more in the bilateral summit meeting that's to come.
Right. So let's look forward to the summit that's to come tomorrow. Oh, well, Professor Kim and Mr. Klinger, thank you so much for staying with us for the lengthy hours. We appreciate your insights. Hope to talk to you again soon.
All right. Thank you.